right, this is a Historic and Architecture Review Board meeting for Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018. And we'll begin. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so the first order of new business is HARB 2018-05, 309 Midland Avenue. This is continued from the September 5th meeting.
Evening, I'm Nick Amelia for the Finleys. And I hope all of you have the structural engineering report. Mrs. Finley just recently received it. I believe Mary Ann tried to send it to you. We do have copies here if you have not seen it yet. That we'll be willing to hand up. Should we hand up a copy of the report? You all have them? Oh, you gave them? I'm sorry. Thanks, Mary Ann. Remember last time, a couple of you were here last time, and last time a request was made to get a structural engineering report, which we have since done. You can see in the report that the report indicates that the structure is not savable. It should be noted that there was a number of these barn-type garage structures in this area on Midland Avenue. I believe Dan told me there's 3 left of probably 40 or 50, just because they were so old and such structural disrepair. So we have the letter from the structural engineer indicating that, and we also have a letter from Danny Sheridan, who's a local builder, who's not building this garage, but also said that he felt that the integrity of it was very poor, the foundations, the roofing, and everything of that nature. I'll turn it over to Dan and Marita, and they can describe the existing condition of the garage, and then we'll show you some photographs of what's intended, and actually we do have some samples of the materials that will be used. The materials that will be used for the reconstruction, the appearance will be very, very similar to what the existing house currently is. So go ahead, why don't you guys take over on that?
Thanks. So just to review, the building's dilapidated and is not functional as a garage, and what we'd like to do is replace the building with something very similar in appearance, gambrel roof with the dormers, with the certainteed cedar impression siding that matches the current house. So architecturally be very similar to what's there. There's pictures of what we intend in there. And then we also have a letter from our next door neighbor. She's the most immediately impacted. We have adjoining driveways, and we'd like to keep the current setback and retain part of the back wall, and that will maintain her sight line through our yard to the church, which is what she would like to see as well. So she's very supportive of the entire project.
Dan, this is the photograph.
Yep.
Of what it would be. And
yeah, so that's something we found on the internet that's very similar to what we would construct, a building just like that with very similar garage doors and 3 dormers instead of the 2 dormers in the picture, and a side entrance door so that the stairs are brought inside as opposed to, in the current building, their exterior stairs that were added on at some point.
yeah, do you plan to survey somewhere? The survey plan?
That was in the initial package, but so the current building size is 36 by 20, and the proposed building size is 40 by 21. So allowing for the additional space to put the stairs inside the building.
One question, what's the height of the current structure?
It'll stay within the 20 feet.
The 20 feet.
Of the zoning
Okay.
required, yeah.
All right, thank you.
And it just shows.
If anyone's interested in certainteed vinyl impression siding, but this is what a lot of the neighbors use, and the high-end vinyl cedar impression siding that matches our house that was redone.
On the pictures that I sent of what our view of the house, our house, and probably from the street, that's what's on our house.
Yeah, and that's another main point that you guys wanted to establish. There's almost no visibility of this structure from the street. So, you know, just
12 of the,
I could see it pretty clearly when I walk down the street coming from the school.
In the school?
yeah, from the school corner, you can, you know, see it in the distance. And like I said, the building's going to maintain the same architectural characteristics and will be in much better shape and look much nicer.
You can see this building from South Aberdeen when I was there, so it's not entirely hidden, but maybe
Yeah, I'm
something
just
with
saying
a foliage arrangement could help that, but especially when I was on South Aberdeen Avenue, it was visible.
Well, hopefully this new one will be much prettier than what's there now.
So,
it is back up against the two gas stations on the corner of Gloucester.
Yeah, so that's the closest adjoining neighbor is a car wash entrance, so this acts as a buffer to that.
okay. Does anyone have a copy of the township? Do we have a copy of the plans that were submitted last month?
I do.
You do, you have in your car? Well,
I mean, 25 yards away.
well, if we don't have to take a recess for you to grab it, then let's see if we've got a copy.
Plot plan, is that, that's what I.
I'll tell you what I'm interested in, because I wasn't able to attend the September meeting. So I'll give you, if you want to, then, okay, all right. Well, we still have 4 of us here, so we still have a quorum, so.
My
Terry,
question
we'll go
is,
back. Can I
when,
just- can I-
as Miles, all right, I have a question when Miles is done.
Okay. So I will tell you my concern, because I wasn't here for the September meeting, the design elements that I saw in the photograph referenced, I thought was going to be a pretty close rendering. If it is, then, you know, in the selection of the design materials, I have concerns about certain elements, not all of it. And I'll also say that I am very pleased with the fact that you ended up getting a structural engineer in order to be able to, review it. Having structures raised just because of aesthetics is an issue. But clearly, there's some significant structural defects that, would be almost past the point without an extraordinary budget in order to repair. But there are certain elements, and I'll tell you the garage doors in particular, the selection, there are certain things that just, to me, don't jive with what I would expect to see as being conforming to the design elements. But that's why I asked if we could get the designs, and thankfully Terry has got them. She's going to be right back. But in the rendering that we had in the photograph, if that's not really what the plan is, I'd rather review what the plan actually is.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sarah.
That's fine. No, my question is, you don't have a final design on the garage. You've showed us a picture of what it probably will look like, and you showed us.
Page 7 of the document is the design.
That is the design. It still looks like a prefab building to me.
Am I looking at these?
I
Yeah.
don't-
Okay.
Which, they don't have page numbers, I apologize.
Okay, because there are differences between this and the other example that you had referenced in the beginning, stating, well, this is what it's going to look like, right? So,
Yeah,
I just want to know,
what it's really going to look like
Yeah.
with the plans. Because what happens is, we give you a certificate of appropriateness for the plan. It goes to the commissioners, and they're going to approve that plan. They're not going to approve something that's just, it might look like this.
Right, so the windows are detailed out there very specifically, the garage doors detailed specifically, the cedar impression, certainteed siding is detailed specifically, all on what was submitted this go-round. And from a structural standpoint, it's a pretty basic structure.
I think I guess the 7 through.
And the pages before, those pages before 7 are the specific materials.
Okay.
Right, 5, starting there's the 5, or the windows are on 4.
And my brother is a window contractor distributor, so he's able to give me very high-end windows for a garage, which will be nice. But
Just like to bring up one issue as I researched this property. The house was built circa 1890. And so I always have concerns about outbuildings because sometimes I'm still thinking one might be really historical from a famous architect, whatever, maybe, I don't know. But I looked on maps for this particular carriage barn. I'm assuming it was used in the early beginning, at least for horses and the carriage. But just to give you some perspective on it, where is my note? The structure does not appear on 1892 and 1905 maps at the Radnor Historical Society. So I'm assuming it was built later, so that also gives me more of a reason that it wasn't truly original to the house. So I think that kind of like helps your argument a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. What was the latest date on the Matthews plan?
It didn't appear on the 1892 map, and it didn't appear in 1905 map. So the structure, just with that, at the very oldest would have been from like 1905. And the house was built in 1890, so it wasn't really a true part of the structure there.
So it's likely a replacement of the original at some point in time.
Or it was just always there after like 1905 plus. That could be the case too. But sometimes these little details can help.
Thanks.
Especially when you're talking about, taking a structure down like that. So. Exactly, yeah. Maybe it was like a part of a field and they had like a little shed back there and they could put their horses in a small carriage. And they must have hit the big time.
Okay. So I'll tell you that, overall, the size and shape, in my opinion, it's fairly close matching to what is currently there. I like the fact that it would be in the same or shared footprint. Obviously, that's a zoning question. I'd go to the zoning board, which you may have already done. If not, you'll end up needing to, because any setbacks that were put in place, if they even existed at the time of the construction of this structure, have changed drastically. The concerns that I have, to a degree, have more to do with some of the nuanced elements. The selection of the garage doors, I don't feel are truly in keeping with the style that I would expect to see from the period of when the house was built. I'd love to be able to see there was a little bit more consideration taken, but it's, that structure itself is, is not dated back to when the house was built.
But also too, Miles, I think it's important to keep in mind that some of these outbuildings were afterthoughts. So that leads me to believe that the original intention wasn't to I think to have more of exactness of taking certain properties from the main house.
I understand that, and I agree with you. I think that the challenge I have is that I would like to see something that, if the original architect were to be challenged with the task of designing a garage would, what elements, design elements. Now, obviously, in that time period, you'd be like, well, you'd be able to anticipate the need for a 3-bay garage and, some of the other elements that are in there. But, but I still like to see those nuances. I like to see a nod to it. Overall, I like the fact that you're maintaining a roof line. I like the fact that the scale is similar. I think you're fulfilling a lot of the requirements. It's just my opinion, and I'm one of the board, that I'd like to see some of the those little elements be a little bit more of a little bit more referenced to what we'd see constructed at that time.
Other than the color, it doesn't seem that there's much in the way of design reference from the garage design that you present to your house. The idea is it should look like it was always there, not like so many people have done and just put a garage. You're putting a lot of effort into this, and I congratulate you and I thank you for your very thoughtful consideration of what we're looking for, and perhaps if the windows that can be seen from the street, sort of that little skewed view, if they could at least take a reference from the main part of the house. If your brother's in the window business, he can provide you with something similar to what you have.
Yeah, he could. I have a complete mishmash of windows throughout my house. So there's not a dominant design of windows. I have 1/1. I have the prairie grid. I have the 9/1. So, throughout time, there's no dominant style. And I think I picked very traditional styles. There's nothing modern in what we're doing.
Yep. If you put it down, yeah, there you go.
I think this is what they're trying to get at, is a neighbor's property. And I can mark this, and maybe this would help the board in decision making. I think the doors that you're intending to put, the doors are similar to what it be.
This was recently approved at the intersection of St. David's and Aberdeen.
Yeah.
So, similar doors, but we're trying to match the color scheme of the original house with the cream and blue. They have a dark house, and they match the dark house, but similar type of gambrel roof design with the dormers.
Okay, well, I think that we should hear from the public. I thought I saw Greg back there. Greg, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, sir. Just a couple quick things. I'm Greg Pritchard again. So first of all, with the garage doors, regarding the garage doors, we see this type of door a lot where I work. And, one compromise maybe, I don't think overall they're inappropriate, but one thing, do you have the picture of the doors that are proposed? The cut sheet. Yeah, there we go.
So they're meant to be the traditional period design.
Yeah, so one thing, and actually we discussed a door like this, very similar to this recently. One thing that might change, the sort of arch shape of the top of the windows doesn't fit in with the square shape of the opening. If the windows were square, that might be a good compromise. It would be the same product, just that minor difference could make a big impact visually. I won't talk about the siding because we don't have standards for that sort of thing, but this may be the only historic district or HARB around that would even consider vinyl siding, so I'll just leave it at that. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, Greg.
Somehow more appropriate.
Square windows are we talking about?
No, the garage.
The garage.
The, no, no, arch versus no, no arch versus a squared off window package up there.
Okay.
Well, they have an arch detail in the opening, so they might be marching it. You know, I don't want to compare one-to-one with theirs.
So we were just, trying to take that into consideration when we were laying these out.
I think they're willing to take stipulations.
Yeah, I would feel comfortable if we were to make a motion, with the requirement that the windows are squared, but because I'm chairing the meeting, can't make the motion, so. Is there a motion? Well, you can make a motion for recommendation for a certificate of occupancy, or for a certificate of appropriateness with the change of the windows from being arched to being squared or level.
Also, just want to say too, at least as far as the overall dimensions of the structure, you're fulfilling that, in my opinion, what already is there existing, but this is obviously an improvement to what's there now, which enhances the welfare of the homeowner and also the neighbor. Just one other quick thought. I was impressed with the neighbor's recommendation, Mr. Sturgy? Is that Sturge? Is that her name? Okay. Yeah, she brought up the whole issue of light. And I just wanted to, before we make any other motion, I just wanted to give an observation on this, because as I saw where, that carriage barn is located, and then it's on Lancaster, and you have the car wash that's there, and the other commercial businesses. And I'd just like to share something with you, because I think it's something important that I think Radnor Township would need to address over time, because it's becoming more and more relevant. And I bring it up because it's in the letter of recommendation from your neighbor. I have an interest in optics ever since I turned around a manufacturer of scientific grade light instrumentation in Philadelphia about 15 years ago. Then I worked on a team to develop a UVC detector used to monitor UVC light that was used to disinfect wastewater and wastewater treatment systems. In my opinion, Radnor Township should develop a standard for human-scale light irradiance for light that is generated from wane businesses such as the car wash. The standard should include two things: light irradiance or intensity, and a measurement of luminousness or brightness for both scotopic light and photopic light. Scotopic light being light that we can see during daytime. Photopic light being the light, what we can see at nighttime, in night vision. And both standards should be comfortable to the human eye in these two categories of light, of the light spectrum, which is visible light. I think, again, I was just very impressed with the neighbor's letter and how this structure is going to keep some of that light pollution away from her house. But again, I wanted to bring it up because I think it's relevant to this case. I think it's going to be more important going forward because we have huge setbacks in the historical districts. And after especially what I've seen, what Villanova University has done, and that increase in light pollution that their new structures have imparted onto the local community. So thank you for hearing me out.
To your point, we have to have blinds across the entire back of the house because it's so bright back there for anybody to be able to
I'll do it.
sleep in those bedrooms that are rear facing.
All right, well, I will hereby make the motion that we issue a conditional certificate of appropriateness pending revision of the garage doors so that the lights are square and not arched, so a provisional
All right.
certificate of appropriateness.
So the window is arched, yeah. Okay, so, so we have a motion for recommendation of appropriateness with the conditions stipulated. All those in favor?
I'll second.
Okay,
Great.
all right.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
We weren't at Community People. What's that? We weren't at Community People.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next, we have HARB 2018-08-224 Upland Way, and this is for the enclosures, correct? Are you okay to spend, okay,
Momentary for brief periods of time. I don't know if I can stand as long as they did.
okay.
But thank you for the consideration.
Hi.
All right, so why don't you give us a brief overview on the project? Do you happen to have the papers with you, or?
We have it on your phone. 7 copies.
Okay, okay.
So
let me,
we live on, oh, sorry.
I tell you what, why don't you take this? Oh, okay, okay.
Thank
Just to be able to have on the table. There's a
Sure.
camera
It's our
located
first time.
directly above there. And so the way in which this works is that because
Thank
it's a
you.
public meeting, we need to be able to provide public record of,
Sure.
what's being discussed. In Radnor, we have embraced technology, and so all of the public hearings are then placed on YouTube. So for all of you out there in TV land, if you'd like to
I
watch
watched the
this
last one.
afterwards, yeah.
I to get prepared, but I
So-
didn't think about this.
Along with that, please don't display anything that shows anything internal. So
Sure.
know,
I
that's-
don't, yeah, I think
yeah.
I was. This is our house, 224 Upland Way, and behind us and across the driveway, across from the garage, there's an additional property and then another fourth property catty corner to us. So there was an estate there apparently, and it burned down in the 60s, and then the property was subdivided, and these 4 brick colonials were constructed in 1964. So what we're proposing.
This is the front of the house. This is the garage.
Wait.
This is the front of the house.
This is the front of the house, this is the garage.
And we're proposing doing work on the porch, which is on
The rear and side of the garage. So you can flip the page. So that's the view from the cul-de-sac. So if you look down, Patrick, if you could point to the Upland Way in the corner, that's Upland Way. You actually go up a cul-de-sac in order to access our driveway. So that driveway is not off of off of Upland, it's off of the cul-de-sac. And then that's the space that we plan to just enclose with stucco to match the rear of the property. But that stucco would match, that would be completely redone, and, a khaki color would match the entire house. So the side that's faced next to the garage would be that khaki colored stucco along with the rear of the property. Can you flip to the next page, please? So this is across our driveway. This is the DuPont's house. You can see they extended the roof line and also enclosed their side porch. This is the Pressmans. They share a property line with us. They enclosed their side porch and then put an addition above about 10 years ago. And this is the Burketts. They're the catty corner property. They extended their roof line and then enclosed their side porch. So the other 3 houses on the cul-de-sac have all kind of gone for the same thing, to make a mudroom and a laundry room.
Okay, and I also believe that this is a non-contributing property for the historic district. So, yeah, so, I think it's terrific that you're here. You come before us and you present. It's not within our purview to be able to make comments on anything that isn't seen from a public place, a right of way, and it's really located in the rear of the house. It can't be seen. So,
Correct.
I
to
would like
reinforce
make a
that-
motion.
Oh,
Yeah.
just to reinforce that, when you're looking at the house from the street on the right side, what they're doing back there is just a very small sliver that's visible, so,
Okay.
you know.
All right, I move
Good to
we
go.
offer you a
Thank you.
certificate of appropriateness.
Hold on.
Okay, so we have on the table a motion for a recommendation for a certificate of appropriateness. Do we have a second?
I-
All right. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Harb 2018-09, 108 Owens Lane. And this is taking down of an existing garage and rebuilding a new masonry wood frame garage.
My name is Todd Kring of Laurel Creek Builders. I'm here on behalf of Leslie Enright, the property owner. The garage that exists now. So what Leslie would like to do is take that down completely to the foundation and expand it 2 feet wider so it's actually a usable garage. And the intent, per the drawings, is to rebuild it as, very similar to that. The foundation will come up 5 feet high with a stucco exterior, and the framing above that will be finished with, again, cedar impressions, vinyl siding to match the siding that's on the house. Be an asphalt roof to match the roof on the house, and a new steel carriage garage door. The only thing that we will change, we'll do half-round gutters again.
think we have a lot
What we
of
are going to change is we're going to do a gable roof instead of a hip roof.
I have a question about property lines.
Mm-hmm, it's right there.
Right. If this is the neighbor's garage,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make this 2 feet wider,
So we're going to go towards the house.
oh, towards the house,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Thank you. That wasn't clear.
I'd just like to give what I think is a little bit of history about this garage type. In my opinion, it's a classic, small 1910s, 1920s garage for a Model A Ford car. You see lots of these in the Conshohocken area if anybody is interested. And I also had one of my older uncles, when he was a teenager, learned how to drive on a Model A. And more so too, this garage is very, very worn. I mean, I've seen this before in other lives. I thought, gosh, a haven for critters, if anything. So, and it is completely visible from the street, but I think what the builder is proposing is definitely an improvement, even though it's a little bit bigger. But again, I don't think we can have any classic designations for classic Model A Ford car garages. I don't think so, but it's cool. So when it piqued a memory, and so I saw that. So at least as far as the roof, again, we can't say it'd be a classic thing like that, but I'm okay with the other type roof. It would be a gabled roof?
It would be a gable.
Okay, so give you more space
Be more
than the hip
space.
roof.
Correct. It'll be about a foot higher than what is there now.
Okay, I'm fine with that. But also, too, I do notice that there's a garage from a neighbor which is adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be a little bit higher height than the neighbor's garage?
Just a little bit, yes.
Okay. All right, I don't think there'll be a light issue, or very minimal.
Jeff gets his truck in there now, but I have no idea how he gets out of that truck because you cannot get the doors open far enough to get out. So the 2-foot expansion is needed to really be able to use the garage.
And also, too, that this property is contributing, but no further information on when it was built. I'm assuming, I like that little lane back there. It's really cozy. So I was thinking maybe those houses, when I've seen others like them, were built for chauffeurs so they could live outside
Sure.
of an estate. I'm assuming that, but a little nice cozy area back there. I like it.
It gives them the opportunity to get a vehicle off the street. So,
That's fine. Do you want to make? I have no further comments. I would like to make a motion that the HARB approve a certificate of appropriateness for this garage.
All right, we have a motion on the table for recommendation for certificate of appropriateness. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right. No report this evening? Yeah, all right. So item number 4 on our agenda is old business report on the new HARB ordinance.
I have no report this month.
Okay, there's no report this month. Public participation, come on down.
Okay, hi again, everyone. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm doing at work right now. We hired a consultant in Lower Merion to draft new design guidelines for our historic districts. But not just the districts, but other historic resources elsewhere in the township. And this is something that I think is really important, and I think it's something that Radnor lacks, and it would make your jobs a lot easier, make the job of the applicants and their architects and representatives a lot easier if the township had that in place. It, among other things, it describes what kind of forms and massings are appropriate in the districts. It talks about architectural styles in the districts. And I'm actually going to go back to siding because it does talk about material items such as siding, windows, that sort of thing. I think that there's kind of a scourge in the districts that I've been noticing lately of wide horizontal siding put in place of traditionally where cedar shingles would have been. It makes a very drastic visual impact on houses that traditionally had that kind of cedar siding instead. Now, there are composite materials that are comparable, I think, in pricing and composition to what these people are doing, but it's much more appropriate visually. One example that comes to mind, 401 Midland Avenue, which was an application. It came back, I think, multiple times about a year or two ago. The original proposal was to build an attached garage on the rear of the residence. That evidently didn't happen. I think it was recommended for denial. What ended up happening was a new owner came in and had someone redo the entire house on the outside. They replaced the windows, the siding. It used to have the decorative shaped shingles, cedar shingles, and I believe it's original windows for the most part, with the same fenestration patterns that had been there for 130 years. Now the house has this wide white horizontal siding with 4/1 windows that are wildly uncharacteristic for the district. And yet none of that was reviewable by the HARB or the township. And I would think, in my opinion, what happened there has a drastically bigger influence on the historic integrity of that house than that rear garage would have had. And so, if you haven't seen that house and what happened to it lately, it's worth going by and taking a look at. And hopefully that might inform some of your work as a new ordinance, or at least a new interpretation of the current rules come into effect. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
I have a question, Greg.
Sure.
Because I have an interest also in the whole issue of this whole massing question. Now, what you're doing at Lower Merion what type of form are you going to use? Are you going to use, like, for example, a numerical dimension towards the massing issue? How are you going to tackle that? Will it be a numbers-based thing? Will it be a visual thing? Because everything I read, because initially I thought, maybe we can have, it can't be over this amount in proportion to the main house, if it's an outbuilding, et cetera. But everything I've read from the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines and recommendations and advisors, they all say that stipulating numerical dimensions on a question of massing is a no-go. Because yes, someone can fill something within a numbers dimension, but it still might not look right.
Yeah, well, that's difficult, and that's something that we're addressing in the entire zoning code right now. We're working with a consultant from Miami, a famous consultant, to rewrite the entire zoning code for the first time since 1927. So it'll be more of a form-based code that the rhythm of these neighborhoods will stay consistent. Someone can't tear down a little Cape Cod house and build a McMansion in its place. That sort of thing would be prohibited. But the process of how things like that are evaluated is a little maybe too complicated to get into here, but that's...
Yeah, I think where I'm at least leaning more and more towards it in the question of massing, does it look right? Outside of any, reasonable numerical dimension, if you will, but that wouldn't be the main criteria. Also, too, I think this is becoming more and more important because we don't know this dimension from our citizens who come before our board, but questions of cost. Now, I think, and I agree with you, having shingles in there, like cedar shingles on a property, looks a heck of a lot better visually than something like aluminum siding. But I know that there has to be some owners that, just because of financial constraints, can't do that. How would, as Lower Merion goes into this, has Lower Merion thought about that issue too? And if so, what ideas do you have out there on how to tackle that? Would there be an economic dimension put into the new code, for example?
I don't think in the code it might be something that someone could plead a case, but if there are guidelines that say vinyl siding is prohibited, vinyl windows are prohibited, then that's the code that can't be modified. And I think there are siding alternatives that are maybe composite materials. They're not cedar shakes that have to be nailed on individually. There are some composite materials that create the same effect, the same appearance. Modifying and upgrading houses within historic areas does cost more in the short term because higher grade of quality materials is what's required. It's what looks appropriate for the district, but in the long term, vinyl windows will have to be replaced again in 15 years. The siding will warp and might have to be replaced as well. So
that's the thing. When I think of the whole cost issue, that it's a whole other dimension of, when people do decide to move into an historic district, no matter where that might be, that they are informed about what that could potentially require. And then I think, again, at some point, we need to do some kind of comprehensive just educational program to make people aware of that. Because I know not everybody here is made of money, hands down.
Right.
So, and I think it's an important issue, especially if you have family, you got kids, you got extended family maybe living there, et cetera, elderly parents, et cetera. It's an issue. And I think, and I agree with you, it would be best to have that. That would be like the optimal outcome. But again, I think that education component, that people really know before they move in or buy a house, what that truly entails. And
well, of course,
just food for thought there on ideas gathering on how we can do that as a board, at least to alleviate any potential suffering.
Well, a seller's disclosure will always have a historic preservation section if there are if someone's buying into an area that has that kind of protection. And, but, you know, it does vary between townships, and, you know, it's up to the township to, you know, for example, having those guidelines and having them available at the building, at the township building, on the website, free for anyone to see. That, you know, gives them some idea of what they might be getting into, of course. But, you know, that sort of thing, it does take time to formulate, and takes a lot of thought and input from the community and the necessary parties. So, but I think it could only help the process and everyone's understanding of what you guys do.
I know I've given you my email address before. I'm going to give it to you again before you leave.
Sure.
To be kept abreast, if you can send us the things that you have come up with, I think it would be very helpful to us, and we'd appreciate it.
Andy,
Great.
I have a question for you. Does Radnor require a seller's disclosure for properties
It's
in
not
the
the-
historic district?
I'm sorry, but the seller's disclosure is not a township-required document. It is a state-required
No,
document.
I understand it's a state-required document, but is historic
The-
district, does Radnor require that?
No, I don't know of any requirements on the seller's disclosure either. If it's preserved, yes. But for a municipal historic district, no.
Well, I've just been through this process, actually. And there is a line, do you know of any historic preservation protections on this house? That would include historic district, being located within an historic district. Well, then they would say no, and they would be wrong, and then it would be their burden.
Yeah, the challenge with that is it would open them up to the ability to sue the previous owner, which probably would not happen if they couldn't afford a material. They probably can't afford to pay for the material plus, or instead pay for the attorney to pursue someone, and what would probably be a fairly difficult case in order to litigate and have any type of solution. I agree with you on everything that you have said this evening. I think that there needs to be an educational component, that the community needs to be aware, and I think that it should be included within the listing description. That this falls within the North Wayne Historic District, the South Wayne Historic District, what have you.
So, sometimes that does appear, Miles, in the work that I do in my research. Sometimes it's a selling point.
It absolutely
in the ad.
is.
And
It's just a
I've
matter of
seen it
whether
more
it's a
than once on
requirement or not.
Zillow, but nearly not enough, as I should be seeing, where, the ones that I've saw, and it probably was only about maybe 3 over a 5-year period, which is a small number, but it made that distinct that this, is located in a historic district as a positive attribute of buying this house. I agree with you. I think that I would like to see, if any house is located in a historic district, that needs to be disclosed, even on something like a Zillow, which your average Joe or
I
Jane
don't
is
see how
gonna
you or
use.
the township can require that, but.
Obviously, I can't, maybe the township can't do
No,
that
I
either.
don't think so.
But that's, again, where, if we have historic districts, it's more complex, I think, than what people realize. But I think what we need to do is develop a strategy where it's going to be beneficial for any potential homeowner, so they can't go and say, well, I'm stuck, or something like that.
Well, here's the thing, and
But how do we do that? That, again, is the question.
in Lower Merion, I'm not sure how it is here, but Lower Merion offers incentives for designated historic resources basically to allow people to modernize their properties without having to demolish the resource. So for example, if it's impossible to build an addition without going 2 feet over the setback line, that sort of thing can be remedied by conditional use. So there are incentives like that that are made available. And so it's not just we're going to tell you what kind of windows to use, but here's what we're going to allow you to do that not everyone else can do. So.
A better follow-up system once the job has been completed, because what we went through with North Wayne Avenue, which our board, our HARB universally nixed, and then the Board of Commissioners allowed, was a complete change on the builder's part from what he had first proposed. And there was no follow-up, and there was no, no fine, no anything.
Well, I can't comment on that specific case because I'm not sure what happened here, but I can say in Lower Merion, it's not just, if it's in an historic district, if a building is being demolished, the demolition is not the only thing that's considered, but the design of the house replacing it, because that has an impact on the overall district. And from my recollection, despite your recommendation of denial of demolition, the design of the resulting house did not get your input. And I can't say if that was a failure of the system. I'm not, I work somewhere else. I'm not as familiar with the code here or the process. But in a district, typically, that's what should happen.
Well, you actually testified on the North Wayne house, because that was the one that was torn down on the basis of structural integrity. And the neighbors, I know at least one who was an attorney, and the neighbor directly across the street bought it and said, this is a deliberate, builder letting the owner let the house deteriorate. It was deliberate. And then, like the little boy who killed his parents and then went to the court and pleaded, give me mercy because I'm an orphan, that was, that was the situation that we were faced with.
Well, I can't comment on the structural integrity of that building because no report was given. So, but I would say that an identical house down the block was completely gutted and rebuilt, and I think almost successfully rehabbed into a viable part of the community again. So, okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. All right. So unless there's anything else
I
on the
make a
agenda?
motion to adjourn.
I have one thing.
Okay.
To seek the permission of the board to do this, but I would like to ask for a beginning time of 6:30, because 6 is now proving so difficult traffic-wise. I'm also going to make a proposal to a change in the no left turn signs at Radnor, Chester, and Conestoga, which gather long lines of traffic with Villanova students. But at the time, no left turn in both directions should, well, it's always no left turn going west, but going east, where the traffic line now goes back to Aberdeen and beyond, it should be 3:30 to 6:30. I'm going to get my camera and start taking pictures of the long line that is occurring earlier, but 6:30 is a more reasonable time than 6.
Well, how about we explore that? We'll take a look and see. I think that we can find out some information from the township, and we'll see if we can make a motion on that the next time we meet. Okay?
Just some input. I commute here from Philadelphia, so I take the train up here. what would be more convenient for me would be able to still take the train to get up here at 6 o'clock. Because otherwise, I'm going to have to make more of a trip to go and get my vehicle to drive here. Maybe as a suggestion, because it works for me. Because if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I'd be half insane by now. I don't understand why some people have all these tremendous commutes and things like that. But I would also just like to put out there as an idea the alternative of public transportation and getting here. It's not too bad. But with that also being said, considering improvements, this is one of the most inaccessible township buildings to get to if you're on foot.
Guys,
Because there is no pavement in a certain part of the area. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. But I just wanted to go and share my opinion, at least, on what Terry has shared with us, with my experience. Because if I had to drive here, it would actually be more time for me driving and making more stops, et cetera, and probably going through, Terry, what you're going through with traffic issues.
All right, well, why don't we explore it, and we'll put it to a vote for their next meeting. All right? Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Okay, all those in favor of adjourning? All right. Thank you.